Hello everyone, welcome to Dublin, welcome to Pro Tour Theros 2013. Rich Hagon, Brian David Marshall, your hosts here in the Tournament Centre. And BDM, what have we got in store this particular Pro Tour weekend?
Well, we're going to see what Theros does to both booster draft format and to the standard format, which has been radically altered by the addition of Theros. Remember, this the addition of this set pushed Magic 2013 out of standard, and it pushed the entire Innistrad block out of standard. So this is an entirely new format that we're dealing with this weekend.
Okay, lots of new cards, some new players, some old favourite faces as well. Let's get to the big board, and we're going to look at some cards first of all. And BDM, you had a terrific piece, and you were kind of theorising about Theros, and you kind of laid it all out there.
You know, this was very early. I made some guesses, educated guesses, I would hope, about what I thought would be the locks, the long shots, the first picks, and then, you know, some commander cards.
All right, well, let's take a look at the white cards first of all. So we begin with the lock. It's Soldier of the Pantheon, and still fair?
I think it's still fair. This card's already posted some results. We've seen a couple of standard opens that have taken place, and some white weenie decks have done very well, and this card is obviously, you know, protection from multicolored seems like a very good thing in a format.
Long shot, Fabled Hero?
I haven't seen it yet, but I've got my fingers crossed for this weekend.
I guarantee you've seen this guy. The first pick, Wingsteed Rider, is huge deal.
I think I got this one right.
Yeah.
I definitely think I got this one right. By the way, we could probably slide Elspeth Sun's Champion over into the lock or long shot category. This is another card that the Esper decks have already been playing with. And I was a little surprised, actually, to see the card doing well in standard, but it's a...
She costs a lot, but she does a lot too.
Yeah,
all right, let's take a look at blue. And what stands out here from Thassa, God of the Sea, Prognostic Sphinx, Prescient Chimera, and Melita's Charlatan?
Well, Thassa, God of the Sea, we haven't really seen the blue decks in standard using much in the way of the new cards yet. I expect Thassa, God of the Sea and Master of Waves to both make a splash this weekend. You know, it'll be interesting to see which one does well. I love Prognostic Sphinx. I think it is eventually going to see play. I don't know if it'll be this weekend or not.
Okay.
Prescient Chimera, I overvalued this card pretty early. Voyage's End and Griptide are both much higher on the blue, as well as the Nimbus Naiad are all above this for me.
Now, is that because blue, we've discovered, is hugely about tempo?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And Melita's Charlatan, a nice multiplayer card there, because it turns out you can choose new carvets. And
I'll make friends.
Yeah, seems fair. All right, let's move on. Our third colour, round the colour wheel we go. It's black. And you've got, I seem to have seen this card before, though not with that artwork. It's Thoughtseize as your lock.
Yeah, this is a card you know that when, you know, pro players are given the opportunity to disrupt their opponents and to gain perfect information about their hand, that gets more imperfect as time goes by, but to get that information and to disrupt the plan, you know players are going to take that opportunity. 2 life is nothing. It's a modern staple. Obviously, we're going to see a ton of it in standard.
I want to ask you about Lash of the Whip, because obviously it's very solid removal.
And that's why I picked it early. I was like, removal is going to be great. This is probably 3rd or 4th for me right now.
Okay.
I have Grey Merchant of Asphodel as my #1 pick. Card's phenomenal. My second pick at this point, my #2 common is Baleful Eidolon.
Okay, so that's the +1/+1 and Death Touch?
Yes, it's always a 2 for 1. It's really difficult for your opponent to deal with. And then third, actually, Sip of Hemlock, which is a little more expensive, has slipped higher than Lash of the Whip, because honestly, -4/-4 doesn't kill enough creatures. Sip of Hemlock does.
Okay, let's move on to the red cards now. The lock, which is going to be over on my right-hand side, Stormbreath Dragon. No surprise to see that there. Then you've got Flame Speaker deck. Tell me a little bit about that. This is your long shot.
This was I would love to see a deck with Scrylands and, you know, Spark Jolts and Voyage's End and just tempo and kind of like the way we've seen people use Flamekin in some previous formats. Just clear things out of the way, attack for 4. I was optimistic, but you know,
now I'll tell you what, you've got a commander card, as you've called it over here, Ember Swallower, because it says each player sacrifices 3 lands, so obviously that scales up. But boy, oh boy, Ember Swallowers are beating across both formats this weekend.
Ember Swallower and Stormbreath Dragon together, you could see those in a big red deck. You know, you can see them in a Gruul kind of like mid-range deck. They're just, you know, fantastic. They come down, they give you great value for your mana that you invest in them, and then in the late game, they just do awful things to your opponent. Awful, awful things.
Let's look at green, shall we? What have we got? On green, we've got Pelucranos, the World Eater over there.
Often playing with Ember Swallower and Stormbreath Dragon, right? In those big mana decks.
For sure. I'm really interested in the Reverent Hunter because anytime a card scales, so it starts as 1/1, but it's fundamentally a 2/2 automatically. Anytime Devotion, this could be a 6/6 maybe.
It could be, but you know, Magic players at the Pro Tour really want consistency, and not the most exciting top deck for those players.
For sure, and Devotion by its nature is not consistent. It's incremental, and maybe you get there for a god, maybe you don't. All right, Leaf Crown Dryad?
I really like this card. I think it's still really solid, but honestly, maybe not for the decks I draft. You know, this is still probably a #1 pick, but I've seen a lot of players moving Voyaging Satyr way up to almost to the top spot in their pick orders. It's a card I think you're going to see people drafting this weekend. There's not a lot of mana acceleration in this limited format.
And they get to untap a land,
Untapping a land with Voyaging Satyr lets you not only cast your monstrous guys, but even later gives you a turn sooner to be able to activate the monstrosity
Speaking of ramp, Karametra's Acolyte, that's super ramp.
Yeah, it's, this card and Voyaging Satyr went right into Rashad's commander deck.
Okay, so 5 colors for you. Just a quick overview of some cards you might see either in limited or constructed this weekend. But what about some people? Well, 3 people who've already got fantastic resumes. Let's put them up on the big board. It's our new class of the Hall of Fame. You're the historian. Take it away.
I mean, this is such a great Hall of Fame class. It's the first time in 8 years of inducting Hall of Fame classes that every single member of the incoming class has won a Pro Tour.
Yeah.
Ben Stark, Pro Tour Paris champion. William Jensen, Pro Tour Boston champion. And of course, Luis Scott-Vargas, the champion from Pro Tour Berlin. What an amazing, amazing class. I can't wait to see what these guys do. They're all playing at the top of their game still. William Jensen just won a Grand Prix. Ben Stark is the #2 or the #3 ranked player in the world right now.
Yeah.
And Luis Scott-Vargas, you know, he's coming off of like, oh, you know, I didn't have a great year this year.
Only platinum.
I better top 16 a Pro Tour and make platinum. Yeah. So, you know, all of these guys are capable of winning a Pro Tour. They're capable of winning this Pro Tour.
Now, I was going to ask you, because obviously the odds are against it just because there's 450 of them and 3 of these.
Sure.
But could this be the time when we see the ring and the trophy?
I would not be shocked to see any of them, especially Ben Stark, just the way he's been playing for the last, you know, 15 months or so.
Okay. They're people who've already proved everything in the game. They're about to have the ring on the finger to prove it. What about some people with some work to do, some stories to tell, some...
People who have a to-do list. Let's take a look at the next slide. These are, you know, my column that's going up on Friday, I have the top 10 players playing in this event with the most pro points with 0 Pro Tour top 8s.
Okay.
Top of the list, 201 pro points. Su Chen Kuo. Now, I mean, granted, you know, no slight on him. He's won the World Magic Cup, right?
And
he's
10 Grand Prix top 8s.
He's got 10 Grand Prix top 8s. He's got multiple Grand Prix finals appearances. But you know, he still doesn't have that Sunday stage at the Pro Tour and you know that's something he wants to do.
Yeah. Similar story with Flock, 6-time team member.
Also a world team champion.
From Chiba 2010. And then you've got Ari Lax. I'd love to see him in the top 8.
Ari Lax, 9th place at Pro Tour return to Ravnica. He had that brutal win and in match against Luis Scott-Vargas. We mentioned Luis Scott-Vargas' platinum. Well, Luis had to beat up on Ari Lax to get there. But we skipped over 2 of the players on the top 5. If we look at the next slide, you get a look at 2 very formidable players who do not have a top 8 yet. Shahar Shenhar, your world champion. A very favorable comparison can be made to Kai Bude. 3 Grand Prix wins and a World Championship before a Pro Tour top 8.
Yeah, and still a teenager.
Yeah, still a teenager. So was Kai.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Reed Duke, Shahar's opponent in the finals of the World Championship, 128 pro points. I feel I would be shocked at the end of this year if both of these guys aren't right off this list.
I'd be quite surprised if they weren't off it this weekend, to be fair. Okay, so there you go. Some of the best players in the game that we've got there, but 4 more to come. Who else do you want to spotlight? Let's take a look.
A couple of notable players who are playing in the tournament this weekend. I'd be remiss in not mentioning Neil Oliver. Neil playing in his first Pro Tour. But he has already won Grand Prix Las Vegas, defeating 4,500 odd players,
including you and me,
including both of us, by virtue of his win.
Yeah.
Playing, and then second place at Grand Prix Oakland. So he's qualified for the first 3 Pro Tours of this year.
Yeah.
Essentially, playing his first Pro Tour. I would love to see like Pro Tour Theros, this kind of Greek myth, following the hero's journey.
Okay, here's a hero's journey for you. John Larkin
Hometown
of
hero.
Ireland got this email in the inbox, said, by the way, John Larkin went to 3 pre-releases, 20 wins, 1 loss, 2 draws. Best player ever from Ireland.
And for my money, when I was, when he was still playing, I had him up there with Ben Stark as one of the top players in the game.
High praise indeed. This young man, Dmitry Budakov, is, of course, he's holding his trophy, a MOX champion, and really acquitted himself well, BDM, at the World Championships.
Yeah, and think about Reed Duke making that MOX to sort of Pro Tour dominant route. Be very interesting to see if Budakov can follow the trail he blazed.
And finally, this young man, Mr. Chris Pikula.
Chris Pikula, multiple top 8s at the Pro Tour. Someone who started playing, very early on. Finished fourth in Hall of Fame balloting this year. Didn't get the necessary voter threshold to get him into the Hall of Fame, and in a weird predicament where a rules change is going to leave him off the ballot next year unless he finds 15 pro points. He's got a special invite to this event similar to John Larkin. He needs a top 16 this weekend, and it's going to be really interesting to see what he does. I am unabashedly rooting for him.
Yep, absolutely. Now, so much to bring you over the next 3 days. But BDM, before they leave the preview, what is the one thing that we're going to learn this weekend?
With a diet of hydras, giants, and massive serpents, anything would get that big.
What is that we've just learned?
That is what the fox says.
Rich Hagon, Brian David Marshall, see you tomorrow.